Hello everybody, it is April 19th. It is a very gray and rainy day, so I know it's really dark in here. And I'm also sitting at my computer for once instead of recording on my phone. So everything's just gonna look a little bit different today. So first things first, I did my book signing event, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how that went because I was really excited to share everything that I made for it. And then I'm going to tell you about finishing my next book. So when I got to the library, I saw that my table was set up in the very front. It was the first thing anybody was going to see when they came into the library. And my husband got a picture for me. And that's just how my table looked. Unfortunately, it turned out that that was probably not great placement for me for a couple of reasons. First off, you would really think that people going to a library would have decent reading comprehension, but everybody just assumed that I was the information desk. So people kept coming to me and asking for directions around the library, or asking to renew or return books, or asking if I could give them some eclipse glasses, because this happened like right before the solar eclipse. And the way the library is laid out, when you go in the front door, there's two information desks, one to either side, but straight ahead was me, so that was where everybody went, even though I had, you know, the big banner on the front and all the books on the table. Nothing I could really do about that. So as part of their book festival, they decided they were going to have live music and folk dancers and things like that, and it was really cool. But they set up directly in front of my table, so for probably about an hour and a half of the 4-hour event, my table was inaccessible because people didn't want to walk through the orchestra to get to my space. So even though it was really neat to be able to see everybody coming in and out, and I got a great view of all of the entertainment that they had scheduled, it was probably not the best space for me to be set up to be trying to get people to come look at my books. I noticed that when people came in, they always went to my left. So that side of the library got all of the action, and there were always people lined up at the tables over there. But you don't get to request your placement. It's just kind of luck of the draw. I think that overall my placement was okay, but it was definitely hindered by the other entertainment that they had going on. Not too broken up about that because, you know, it's not something that I would have anticipated. It's also not something that I could have changed. But hopefully if I ever do any more like conventions or festivals like this, I'll get a little bit better of a place. As far as the turnout of other authors go, they prioritize people who have never been part of the festival before, so there are a lot of first-time authors who have just like one book. So this was my first time doing it, and I had, I think, 14 titles that I had laid out on my table. So I was very tight on space, but it also made a really impressive display. That said, nothing humbles you faster than when the person they put immediately next to you is an Olympic gold medalist. It's like, what have I done with my life? I just wrote some fantasy books. She was very sweet, though, very extroverted. Now, as far as the things that I made, I had my sign-up sheet that I made where people could join my email newsletter, and I had not a ton of people, but probably like 5 or 6 people sign up to get the free ebook and get on my mailing list. So that was pretty good, especially since like the day before the event, I discovered that MailerLite had actually broken all of my automation after I migrated to the new version. I had tested it when I migrated everything and it all worked correctly, but at some point after the migration was completed, everything broke. So the reason my newsletter had not been growing for the past like 2.5 months was because nothing was happening when people were signing up for my email newsletter. So that was a fun discovery, and I got to spend a lot of time fixing that at the last minute. There was the content guide that I made. So people really seem to enjoy this. A lot of people who stopped by my table spent time going over the list, and quite a few also took a photo of this guide and took that home with them on their phones. There were a lot of parents that stopped by that really appreciated being able to see at a glance what was going to be appropriate for their younger readers. So I definitely think that this was a good idea, and it's something that I'm probably going to try to connect to my social media. I had an older version on Instagram, but I'm going to try to make this more accessible because it really seemed like it was something that readers were valuing. The little free ebook cards that I made for Gail's gift that have the QR code on the background, these were a hit. People were very excited about the possibility of having the free ebook. Everybody always asked before they could take one though, and it's like, but it says it's free on it. Why are you asking? Just take it. I gave away so many of these. I still have quite a few because I printed a ton, but I had probably at least half of my stack is gone. I've also seen a couple more ratings pop up on this book on Amazon, so I know people are being able to download and read it. This was also really nice for the people who were interested, but they said they couldn't afford to buy any books right now. They'd already exhausted their budget for the month. So it was really nice to have something that I could just be like, well, hey, take one of these, and then, you know, you still have something that you can read. And if you sign up for the email, then you can get another book for free too. And they were very appreciative of that. The most popular bookmark was the one for Spectrum Legacy, which I am not surprised by because it's so sparkly and pretty. Where I was set up, the light was coming in the front windows and it was coming down through like a glass art installation, so there was like rainbow light coming across my table and then lighting this up, and it was sparkling like that, so it really caught people's eye and they were very excited to have the very pretty sparkly bookmark. The second most popular bookmark was the one that I had done for the Assassin's Bride, which really surprised me because it was like so different from what all of the other bookmarks are like. But I wasn't sure how people were going to feel about the very hand-drawn, slightly anime art of mine, but people really seemed to like it, so quite a few people took that one too. Everybody who bought a book, I gave them a bookmark to match and also the stickers that I have to go with that series. I gave them the stickers that match their book, and overall people seem to be pretty excited about that. And then I only have the little sold out cards here that I made that I'm going to use to talk about the different books and how they did, because I did not want to go get a whole stack of books and bring it down here to talk about them. So going into the event, I really thought that my best-selling book was going to be The Assassin's Bride. This was one that was kind of like featured for my table. All of the information on the handouts for the event talked about this one. And it's also consistently been my bestseller on Amazon, so I really thought that this was going to end up being the most successful book at the event. And I was so surprised because the best-selling book was actually the 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 omnibus. People were so excited about the idea of getting like the entire trilogy as the one thick book. I also had two different covers for the book. I had the older cover, and then this one is the newer cover, so people had their choice of which version of the book did they want. And they really enjoyed that too. So I ended up selling more copies of 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 heist than anything. It surprised me because this has been out of, you know, all of my books that are currently available. The 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 heist books are my worst selling series. It's like I feel like I cannot give this book away. Even when I have had the first book, the first in the trilogy, free, I cannot get copies of this book to move. But then when I'm at this event in person, you know, everybody gravitates to this one. Everybody's looking at the back cover. They're asking me questions about it. I'm telling them about how most fantasy heists have a crew, but this one is a solo heist. And they really liked that concept. So that was a little bit heartwarming because, you know, this has always been kind of like my underdog series. So it was really great to see it finally getting some positive attention. You just never know what people are going to gravitate to, I suppose. So my second bestseller was Spectrum Blade. Everybody loves the covers for these books, and I don't blame them because I also love them, and I have always loved this artist's work, and that's why she's doing the covers and not me. This was also the only one where somebody wanted to get all of the books in the series, so somebody picked up all 4 books that are currently out, all at the same time. Since West King's Heist is an omnibus, I feel like it has an unfair advantage there, so I don't really count it, but this was the one where someone was like, yeah, I want all of them. Meanwhile, there was the Snake's Blood Saga, which I thought would be a little bit more successful, but when it came to the toss-up between do I start this series or that series, more people went with West King's Heist. I still had a couple people who took home a copy of Serpent's Mark, so they're starting the series, and hopefully they will enjoy it. When it comes to the Artisan Magic books, there was nobody interested in books 2 and 3, and only one person went home with a copy of The Assassin's Bride. I had invited people to bring books that they already had from me to have me sign them. So I got to have that experience of, people coming in specifically to have me sign a book that they already had, and that was really cool. So overall, since some of the things that I signed were books people already had, I sold 13 books. I had way too many books with me, and that'll definitely change how I do things in the future. But I also had a lot of people tell me that they're just not buying books right now, even though they were interested, just because things are so bad with the economy right now. People don't have the extra wiggle room in their budgets to be able to take home books. So, that's outside my control. But for being a nobody author doing an event for the very first time, I think 13 books was really quite a lot to sell. In the future, I think I won't have my entire series up on the table unless they're standalones, like the Artisan Magic books, since all 3 of them can be read separately. I think it made sense to have all of them out on the table, but in the future I'm probably just going to have my book 1s up on the table so that I have more space, and I'll probably take fewer copies of the later books in the series because they just didn't really move a lot. There were several people who had asked me to bring later books in the series so that they could pick them up when they came to the event, and then they ended up not being able to make it. So that's all for the book event, and the next thing I have to share is about my writing. And the great news is that on Wednesday, I finished writing my next book, The Witch and the Worm. So when I decided I wanted to write a fairy tale retelling, I decided I was going to start with the fairy tales that were my favorites, because I hardly ever see retellings of those. And it turns out the reason that I never see retellings of those is because nobody is familiar with these fairy tales. So for The Witch and the Worm, and this one is actually really fun because it turns out there is no real consensus on how it is supposed to be said in English, I decided I was going to write a romantic fantasy retelling of Jorinda and Joringel. If you have no idea what that fairy tale is, apparently you are in good company, because absolutely nobody I have spoken to, including other fairy tale retelling authors, they've never heard of this story. When I went into it, I planned that this book would be about 50,000 words. I figured I could write it in a month, and then I had consecutively 4 really horrible months where I could not write anything. So it ended up taking me all of those months to write the amount that I typically write in 1 month. But I did finally get it done, and I am really excited to have it done. It ended up falling a little bit short. It's just under 49,000 words, but I am sending it off to my editor today, and I'm pretty sure that since I'm a chronic underwriter, I'll probably be able to find some places that I can beef it up a little bit and get it up to that 50,000 count that I wanted, because at that point it graduates from a novella to a full-length novel. But if it ends up being a novella length and it's just 1,000 words short, I'm just going to round it up, and I'm calling it a novel. It was a novel's worth of work, and I think it deserves the title. So I have the cover done, and I am going to be making graphics today for the cover reveal, so I'm not going to share it yet, but I'm really happy with how it came together. I got the cover done ages ago. The book is going off for editing now, and it's going to be ready to go out sometime this summer. Since my last release was in January, it's either going to be June or July. Haven't really decided. I think the end of June is a reasonable time frame, because at that point that gives me just under 2.5 months. If I was in traditional publishing, that would be an absurd timeline, but things are different with indies, because as my editor is making changes, I can see them live and I can address them the same day. So if we hit anything that needs a big rewrite, I can jump right in and get that done within just a couple of days, and there's not really any delays. But I'm also a very clean drafter. That's a comment that I have gotten from every single editor that I have ever worked with, is they've all been very impressed by how clean and well structured my drafts that I turn in are. And I don't typically tell them that that's what a first draft for me is. That's why it takes me a long time to get the words out, is because when they go down on the page, I want them to be the right words the first time. And since I am a linear writer, I go from beginning to end. I don't really have to go back and do any cleanup or major revisions to tie things together either. If I reach a point that I'm stuck and I can't move forward, I know it's because something in my plot needs to change, and I go ahead and fix it right then so that everything is still correct in a linear fashion. And I'll probably talk a little bit more about how I outline my stories and how I adapt with my next book, I guess. I'm going to be working on Paragon of Shadow, which is the 5th book in the Spectrum Legacy series. And while I had it outlined previously, I wasn't really totally happy with that outline, so I'm going to go back and do a more robust one with my favorite outlining method. So that's something that I'm going to be sharing soon. But in addition to the graphics for The Witch and the Worm that I'm making today, I'm also going to go ahead and put together the paperback so that as soon as I have the book fully edited, I can just, pop it into Vellum, format it really quickly, and go ahead and get some copies here. I'm going to be putting it up for pre-order pretty soon. I'm going to be running a longer pre-order than what I have done previously, just to see how that goes. So if I have it up by the end of the month, that's going to be like an almost 2-month-long pre-order, and I think that's the longest that I'll have ever done. So when I do the cover reveals, I'll be sure to share that here. I think I'm going to start sharing some of the things that I put up as Instagram reels here as shorts as well. So you'll be able to see some of my teasers for this book. But I am just going to finish out by reading the blurb that I wrote for it last night. I don't know if this is 100% going to be the sales copy that I use on the books page on Amazon, but I've got a couple weeks to figure it out before I have to decide. So here it is. Here's the blurb. Adalind has spent her entire life dreaming of marrying Bastian, the prince she helped save when she was just a child. But when tragedy strikes and Bastian's brother is slain, he is thrust into the role of heir to the throne, shattering any hope of a union with a simple peasant girl like Adalind. Now his hand has been promised to the daughter of a powerful witch, and in exchange the witch promises to destroy the dragon that took his brother's life. Unwilling to abandon his love for Adalind, Bastian rejects the witch's daughter, and as punishment is transformed into a worm. Now, to save her homeland and rescue the prince from his curse, Adalind must embark on a perilous quest at the witch's behest, uncover the secrets behind the dragon's rampage, and face the threat of the ultimate sacrifice to prove her unwavering love. The Witch and the Worm is a sweet, no-spice retelling of the fairy tale Jorinde and Jorngel, a romantic fantasy that weaves a heartwarming story of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring power of love. And this is where I get to share that for the past 4 months, my husband has been cracking up every single time I bring up working on this book. Every single time I say anything about this, he looks at me and he starts laughing and he says, "But would she love him if he was a worm?" And yeah, that's it. I wrote the worm book. It is, would we really love the worm? So yeah, that's it. That is done. I think the biggest challenge that I faced was realizing that I needed a bigger cast than what I had for the second half of the book. So halfway through, I had to kind of expand the curse breaking team a little bit, and I think it worked out okay, because as soon as I introduced another player, another named character who could tag along and help, then everything just really fell into place very nicely. So, that was kind of the missing ingredient for the perfect book. Well, I mean, it's not perfect, but hopefully people will like it. And I guess we'll find out soon enough. I posted my first teaser on Instagram yesterday. I've made a couple images that I'm going to be sharing as teasers. I'm going to see if I can find a couple people to share cover reveals with me at the end of the month. And that's when the pre-order is going to go up. It's going to be up for pre-order for 99 cents for the ebook. I think I'm probably going to make the price $3.99 for the full-length book, even though it's shorter than what I typically do, because I just don't see any fantasy romance books for less than $3.99, regardless of whether or not they're a novella. Quite a few of them are $4.99, even if they're short, but that feels weird to me. So, but we're starting at 99 cents. It doesn't matter. If it does really well at 99 cents, it might stay there for a long time. But that's going to be my second release of this year. I'm really excited to get started on Paragon of Shadow, but I've already been talking for like an hour, so I'm going to stop and start editing this so I can hopefully get it cut down to a reasonable length. Thank you for joining me. I hope it's sunnier and prettier wherever you are. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And if you're interested in seeing how I plot things out for my next book, that's going to be my next project. So stay tuned, make sure you're subscribed, and hopefully I'll have that done in the next couple of weeks. See you next time.